it's now 11:30. We're going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission agenda. I just have a couple of things before we turn it over to the director and talk about the agenda. So just want to confirm, are all five of us going to the Chamber Leadership Conference on Sunday? You're not coming, Dave? Okay. You are, Ken? Perfect. And then director, you're coming. Perfect. So we'll notice it for sure. And then I just wanted to state on the public record that I will not be able to go, but really encourage staff if we can. There's going to be the Goddard Linear Park groundbreaking on Thursday. That we had a very small, albeit important role in that. It's by Capitol High School. So I don't know if Aaron or Ryan, we can just be there and celebrate that work by the West Bench Neighborhood Association and the city. It's, I think, at 11 o'clock. I can't make it because I've got a conflict. And then I wanted to, and I hate to put you guys on the spot, but I was really curious. I wasn't able to make the TMC tour last week and wanted to ask the three of you that were able to go what your highlights were of the event.
Madam President, we had cancellations, and so we canceled the tour.
Oh, you canceled the whole thing?
Yes. However, I'm taking the executive team out there this coming Friday, and you're more than welcome to, a week from Friday, you're more than welcome to join us at that point in time if you'd like.
What time?
Yeah, can you send an email out, Stacy, with that?
Yeah. We're asking to get to McElvey. We don't have confirmation, but we're asking for 10 a.m.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any housekeeping items? Or, I mean, I know we have some questions about the agenda. Commissioner McKinney, did you have any additional questions?
No, I don't think so. I believe the questions were pretty adequately addressed by the director and others.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I would, same thing. I know we're deferring item 7 till we find out more from the city of Boise about their trails network. I would ask though, when the item, the Pollard Ln Vacation, I think I referenced this last time it was on the consent agenda, just when it's scheduled, come back with a description of the connectivity that exists in that area, because obviously that Pollard Lane was originally preserved to connect via mid-mile collectors or quarter-mile collectors. So just, if you could have that for the public hearing, that'd be great.
Okay, Director.
Madam President, on item number 7 on the consent agenda, if you could please refer that back to staff indefinitely. Since it's just a set the date thing, we'll work through it and come back to you when all the pieces and parts have been fully coordinated.
Okay. All right, Director Wong, we're ready for your update.
Thank you. Commissioners, Madam President, Commissioners, good morning. A little different director's report today. We have several videos that we'd like to show you that have been done by our tremendous communications team. As you know, we just ended last week's maintenance rodeo. And so we'd like to show you a little bit of what went on and then introduce you to some amazingly talented team members that will be representing us here at the national competition. So if I could have that first video, please.
If I were to describe the equipment rodeo in one word, I would say talent. It gives us an opportunity to bring all of our operators out and really showcase the acumen that they have in operating the heavy machine. So this gives us an opportunity in a closed course setting to kind of test those skills, push them to certain parameters, because that can help us to identify who the best of the best are.
And the first place winner are the individuals that we will send to Colorado to represent us in the National Rodeo. 1,125 out of 1,600, which is really good. Can we have Greg Gallagher come up here, please? In first place with 1,325 points. Could I have Adam Cretan come up? Okay, for first place, drum roll please. With 1,160 points. The difference is 60 points only. Could I have JR and Jerry Garcia? Okay, could I have Gavin Buford and Eric Lopez please come up front? Because they tied in points, it is now up to time to break that tie. Second place, with a time of 4 minutes and 13 seconds, was Gavin Buford. And Eric, he had a time of 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Woo!
Madam President, Commissioners, it's now my absolute honor to have Jennifer come up and introduce you to the best of the best that will be representing us at the national competition. Jennifer?
President Pickering, Commissioners, Jennifer Behringer, Deputy Director of Maintenance. We did have a lot of competitors, and I wanted to kind of highlight the 4 different courses that we had and all of the top place finishers, because it was really a tight competition. A lot of people were out there. We had Commissioner Goldthorpe out cheering people on. But right now, I would like to focus on our first place finishers and bring them up for you to meet them, because they will be representing ACHD at the National Equipment Rodeo in September. So if I could have, please, for the truck course, team first place, JR Grasmick and Jerry Garcia. For the grader course, Greg Gallagher. For the skid steer course, first place was Eric Lopez. And for the loader course, first place was Adam Creighton. Commissioners, I'm absolutely proud and pleased and honored to present this team to you. Thank you.
We will, of course, offer our annual challenge to ITD that they always never accept, but we're looking for gold. I'm sure we'll be bringing back gold again to you all. Commissioners, as you know, this is Work Zone Safety Week, and our communications team went out and produced several videos, short, I'd like you to take a look at in really celebration, but most importantly, awareness. So if I could have those rolling, please.
Hi, this is Ryan Head, Deputy Director of Development and Technical Services at the Ada County Highway District.
I'm Jennifer Behringer, Deputy Director of Maintenance for Ada County Highway District.
It's National Work Zone Awareness Week, and we want to encourage you all to slow down and please pay attention to all crews who are in work zones.
With over 250 dedicated workers in the right-of-way every day, we want to make sure they get home safely to their families.
Our team wears orange most days, so join us Wednesday by wearing orange for Go Orange Day to recognize those who are regularly in work zones.
Please follow all signs and instructions to ensure a safe environment, not only for our crews, but for you as well. Drive safely.
Move in the open lane and keep your distance. Please be courteous and be sure to leave room between your vehicles and our crews on the road. Move into open lanes and be sure to check your blind spots when doing so. Remember, work zones are temporary, but your actions behind the wheel last forever.
If you know you'll be out traveling, take some time to plan your route with our RETA map that will help you avoid construction zones that might be in your way. A little extra research and planning on your part can take you a long way. Remember, work zones are temporary. Your actions behind the wheel could last forever.
Please pay attention. The signage on site is for your protection and ours. Even if our crews are working elsewhere, please keep your eyes open, pay attention, and follow any and all signage through the work zone area. Work zones are temporary, but your actions behind the wheel can last forever.
I know it can be tempting to hurry to get to your destination, but please slow down, limit distractions like loud music, food, and cell phone use in the work sites. It's for your safety and ours. Work zones are temporary, but your actions behind the wheel can last forever.
It's okay. Commissioners, those are the videos that are going out and to ensure that we give the public another help in awareness for all work zone operations. As you all are aware, upcoming this Sunday is one of the toughest half marathons in the country called Roby Creek. And for the last several years, the Ada County Highway District has been asked, and we've always responded, of making sure the course was as safe as possible based on the snow events and all the different things that are going on there. So our crews were out there again this year, moving a lot of ice and getting rid of a lot of ruts. So they made this video to show you just a little bit of what they do. So commissioners, you want to say hi again? Commissioners, again, the sponsors are very grateful because we really don't have to do that and such, but for the benefit of all the citizens that are out there watching and participating, we think it's the right thing to do every year, and we will continue to do that as we move forward. Commissioners, we talked a little earlier about this new staff template that we were producing. And I wanted to ask Mindy to come up and just give you a quick overview that we believe will greatly simplify the review that our customers go through in a very, very lengthy process moving forward. Mindy?
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Mindy Wells, Development Services. Before I go into my information briefing, I want to take a moment and introduce one of our planners because we don't come down the hill very often. But I wanted to introduce you all to Carrie Lee Troyer. She is the newest member of our planning team and development services, even though she's been with us just about a year. I don't think she's had an opportunity to come before you, so just wanted to introduce her to you. So for our information briefing today, I'm going to be presenting you our revised staff report format and template. When we began thinking about revising the template, we were thinking about, why is this important? And there's a few answers to those questions. One is we're always looking for the best way to communicate the information in our staff reports to our customers. As you're all aware, our reports are very technical in nature and they can often be information dense. So we always are striving to communicate that information that's a way to, that's easy to understand for all of our users. Our customers are often only interested in what's required, and this is true of applicants, our partner agency staff, as well as those decision makers, planning, zoning commission, and city councils at our lead agency, partner agencies. This information has always been included in our staff reports, but it's at the end of the report, and the findings and the policies were often passed over. We received feedback from our partner agencies that our staff reports were too long, and it was often hard to find applicable information, and findings could be confusing, and that's specific to traffic impact study comments. And then earlier in last year, Commissioner, similar to what's provided by Compass. So I want to talk a little bit about the process of revising the template. So prior to making the revisions, we prepared a questionnaire and sent it all to our 7 land use agency partners. Questions in the questionnaire focused on how they use the reports. Are the ACHD staff reports easy to understand? What could be eliminated, and what should be included in a 1-page summary? We received 3 responses, and they all varied, but some similarities emerged, including, they want to know what is required, trip generation, does ACHD have planned improvements, and do we have any concerns or issues that the land use agency should be aware of? And we use this to craft the 1-page summary. So what has changed? Not much has really changed in the body of the report. It still has, but it has been reorganized. So it still includes all of our policies, findings, and requirements. We have streamlined the information included to eliminate some of the land use content, as well as to eliminate the repetitive information. The reorganization of the information is the biggest change. We moved the site-specific conditions of approval, or what those requirements are, up to the beginning of the report. This is really what everybody seemed to be interested in. We separated the policies from the findings to make the content a little bit easier to read through, and then reduced all the redundancy in the report. We've also included an index on the front page. So if somebody's specifically looking for a policy section, they can go to that front page and see the policies begin on page 14. There's a discussion of arterials on page 2, and all of that is easy for them to get to. The biggest change, and then what I provided you today, is the 1-page summary, which is new to us. And this is based on feedback we received from the questionnaire. And it touches on level of service, planned improvements, is the traffic impact study required, does the development meet our policies or require revisions, and it includes a trip generation estimate. And this is really intended to provide a brief overview or answer questions briefly, kind of an at a glance, and we really are just checking the boxes as applicable on this sheet. We began using the new format in February, as well as the 1-page summary, and so far we've received positive feedback. Not a lot of feedback, but what we have received has been positive. And then the plan is to follow up with our partner agencies in about 6 months, and then we'll modify the document as needed. And then I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Hanson?
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Of course, now new people looking for it don't learn how to read staff reports and go into the details, which you, after being on the commission for 12 years, you develop some, okay, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So as long as the 1-page summary on the front isn't an excuse for not reading the rest of the detail and the hard work that went into preparing the materials, then it's great.
Thank you.
I guess my only question is, I mean, we've heard from communities, and it obviously varies depending on the development.
It does.
But oftentimes they don't really know. I feel like this is a bigger problem that like a 1-page document can't solve. But it's very much like, how is this going to actually impact the larger network beyond just these numbers, but more of like a qualitative side of things, or how does ACHD truly feel about the ability to handle the growth that's coming on from this development? And I feel like there is a way that you could kind of weave that in with some type of summary statement that explains the overall impact, because I think oftentimes staff and other elected officials don't know how to crosswalk these boxes being checked to the actual impact and what's felt in that development.
Yeah, so all of the boxes actually tie back to a specific section of the staff report, and that's actually feedback we just received this week from Meridian is, could you please reference the box to the page in the report? So that's something that we'll add that'll make it a little bit easier.
And so there isn't going to be some type of overall summary, though, that speaks to...
I mean, really, in development services, we're reviewing whether or not a development application meets our policies and standards and whether or not mitigation's required. I think development is one of those things where it's easy to have an opinion and we can report, is this going to meet level of service? Is it not going to meet level of service? But in terms, it's hard to really know until it's built, and that's information we have been providing in our reports and will continue to provide in the reports. I guess I don't exactly understand what you're asking for.
Commissioner Gold, did you have anything to add?
Well, I appreciate that you're going to continue to take feedback from the partner agencies and incorporate that into the document. I do think, so this template that you gave is kind of like the one-page summary, kind of, is that the, you referenced what I had asked regarding something that kind of looks like compasses, and is this that?
Yeah, it's not replacing a staff report. This is just one page at a glance. Let's say somebody's at a planning and zoning commission meeting, and we typically don't have liaisons of planning and zoning, so a lead agency staff would say, hey, can you tell me if ACHD has planned improvements? They can look at this front page and see, yes, we've checked a box that says we have planned improvements. We checked a box that says it's in the 5-year work plan, and then we're going to add C page, so they can quickly open to that page and say, ACHD has a pedestrian improvement planned on this street, and this is the design year, and this is the construction year.
Yeah, I do think that, taking that kind of information out and highlighting it, and then that feedback, I also agree with, of referencing, the page number, so people can read more detail about those things. I think that's all great, but having some kind of way of reflecting the impact on the network, I think that's something, I agree with Commissioner Pickering that is something that we've heard from partner agencies too, is that getting that bigger picture sense as they're working through development applications, and any way that we can help provide that feedback and information so that they can make those decisions. So yeah, I think as we continue to work through this and get more details and information that we can incorporate will be great.
Thank you.
I think an example of that could look like, a summary statement that speaks to, hey, this particular development has seen, the area has seen a lot of development, so there's been a lot of impacts that speak to X, Y, and Z. And although that there's these projects that are planned, we urge you, the city, to consider or incorporate or be mindful of these various timelines that are putting stress on those neighborhood homes. Like, those are the types of elements that I think that cities are really looking for, because this is obviously very helpful, but it's how should this inform them, not only of do we approve of this development, but how does this impact other development that's coming down the pike, or other aspects of things that are outside of ACHD control.
I understand what you're asking for, and I can think of one instance in particular where we have done that. And the hard thing is, I recognize and understand what you're asking for, but we are really limited in the policy section that we operate under. So can we get there? Yes. Am I exactly sure what tool it would be? I'm not sure.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, so Mindy, this is great. And it's actually good timing, because last week we had a city council members come and sort of do an orientation with us. And one city council member who couldn't make it knew when she said it would be really valuable if we could do this with new P&Z commissioners, because the P&Z commissioners, having watched the P&Z hearings over at Boise, oftentimes are saying, no, we have the authority, we need to decide this. We can impose these conditions, but the perception is, oh no, ACHD's already decided that, and they sort of draw these conclusions from your staff reports, which they shouldn't be drawing because the authority lies with them. So there is lack of clarity, particularly about the impacts to the larger system that this additional development. So from the commission level, I think it'd be really good to have those discussions with P&Z commissioners as well as council members so that we can help brainstorm how to improve that process, so that we can then inform you what's the best way of reflecting that in staff reports. So I sort of throw it back on ourselves. Let's take that next step and do some work with P&Z commissioners. And if you watch those P&Z hearings, you'll hear those questions being raised and being directed at our staff, which is like, no, that's not our job to make this decision or to draw these conclusions. You have that authority. I mean, it's at the top of our agenda every day. But we don't quite appreciate how those commissioners then make that initial decision. It goes to the council members, but the first point of contact to make those decisions is the P&Z commission. So that's what I would suggest our next step should be as we decide what then to ask our staff to do.
Chrissy, did you want to respond?
Madam President, I think what you're saying is something we've already started initiating, and it has really nothing to do with the staff report format.
Yeah.
So what folks really struggle with, either an elected official or a neighbor or sometimes even the developer themselves, particularly with the large developments where we have traffic impact studies, we read those and we know what they mean, but quantifying those to be something that you can really understand is very difficult. And so in the last year, actually, we've started changing how we provide that information. So if there's a delay of 2 minutes at a signal, what does that look like? What does that mean? How many minutes does that add to somebody's commute, or how many cycles does a pedestrian? So we're starting to, as we get that information in on those larger developments, it's how we present that information in a less technical format. So you're not seeing that in the staff report format, but we are starting to make those adjustments in how we present that information in the report.
And thank you, Christy. That's exactly that's what me and Commissioner Gold are talking about. And so if you could share what that looks like and who you're like, just an example, just to illuminate to us, like how you're doing that and to who, that would be really beneficial.
Sure. I can think of one report recently where it's pretty significant, so we can share that with you to show you how we're trying to get that information out there in a more usable way. Beautiful. For those.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Well, the only thing I would say, and I appreciate all this and the efforts, is I don't want to see us go back to the pre-note days. We have this note on our agenda for a reason, and that is that we're not a decisional body for the land use planners. And the more we start to behave like one, the worse things are going to get. So I know you're remembering those days, but I hope the commission is not giving you any instructions that we should take any more of a lead on some of these decisions that they make than we're actually required to do. Thanks. Besides, only 3 of them responded to this.
They did, yeah.
Commissioners, again, that was going to be my next request to all of you. We can really use your help on this issue. Talk to your fellow elected officials. On this, as you saw, 3 of 7, majority coming from Meridian, and such, others not as much. So as we go through this process, I think we greatly appreciate your discussions with your fellow elected officials, because this is important. It'll affect them, and if we don't get the feedback, then we continue to march down the same path. Commissioners, again, very quickly, we have the WDS Gala tonight, sold out. We'll be there Thursday, 5 p.m. The PAG meeting is on Zoom. Sunday through Tuesday is the Boise Chamber Leadership event up at Sun Valley. And then next Thursday is the absolutely phenomenal Bring Your Child to Work Day here at the district. Hope you'll all be able to attend or at least stop by. Madam President, that's my director's report for today.
Thanks, Director. Okay, we'll be at ease for like 15 seconds.
Gives me enough time to get back over there.
Yeah, thank you. All All right, it's now 12 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone in person and online joining us for this meeting. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Don't believe we have any of those requests. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I would move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of deferring item 7 back to staff indefinitely.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we just have one regular agenda item, and it's the authorization order of condemnation for State Street and Pierce Park Lane, ACC project number 317044.001, parcel 6 at 400 South Bitteroot Drive, Boise, Idaho. Hi, Mr. Serdar.
Hello, thank you. Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for Ada County Highway District, This is a condemnation briefing and decision hearing for a parcel on our State Street in Pierce Park Lane. It's parcel number 6. The owner of this parcel is Robert Williams. This project is part of our ACHD 2024 to 2028 integrated 5-year work plan. Construction is scheduled to begin in fiscal year 25. Oops. I don't know what I just did. Sorry about that. Here is the site map. As you can see, the golf course is just kind of almost due south of the actual parcel. It's on the north side of the road there. We have here the temporary construction easement is in the purple, and the red is the permanent easement. The acquisition is 2,104 square feet. The temporary construction easement is 1,299 square feet. Property size before the acquisition is 0.44 acres, and the property size after the acquisition is 0.39 acres. This property is zoned general commercial. For the negotiation summary, offers were first made in 2023. There were multiple attempts to contact the property owner through mailing and phone calls. Finally, ACHD was able to get a hold of the property owner in fall of 2023. Of the property owner's concerns was the movement of the sign, potential loss of parking, and potential loss of a tenant. ACHD is currently working to resolve these issues, and as always, will continue to negotiate with the property owner throughout the condemnation process. We are at a point in this project where we are time critical, and it is staff recommendation that ACHD declare the acquisition area necessary for the project as a right-of-way and public use, authorize staff to proceed with the condemnation action, and execute an order of condemnation for the acquisition area. I will remain standing for any questions.
Thanks, Dave. And it doesn't show on the agenda that this needs to be an open public hearing, but I need to open the public hearing, right, Steve? Okay, so apologies for that, but I'll open the public hearing. Any questions for staff?
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Dave, just quickly on the parking issue, is there space on this parcel for mitigation of the parking loss in another area, or is it pretty much already full, and is the owner going to be put in a position of simply having insufficient parking for the commercial use? Or is that not a problem?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, we have looked at the parking pretty significantly. It looks like there's probably about one stall that may be permanently impacted. It will not drop in below it will not drop in below the required parking. So it is an impact, and we are definitely trying to minimize that impact as a staff.
Okay. All right, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Hanson?
And just, thank you, President Pickering. Just to clarify, the property to the east and to the west have already been acquired. Is that correct?
I just got to get it in my brain which one it is here. So make sure I have it correct. For the project as a whole, we only have one other project, a parcel that we're negotiating with. I believe the project to the east, we're still negotiating. Can I get the map back up there? That's what I really need. Yeah, the property to the east is the Les Schwab, and we just got them to sign last week. And I believe the property to the west is the one we brought for condemnation. So,
Thanks.
the car wash is, okay. Car wash is to the west. So that is the one we're still negotiating. Sorry about that.
Thanks. Is this it? Once those three are done? And then one left?
One left.
Just one left. Okay. I know this has been a long process.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Is the property owner present? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners?
I think, Madam President, just before closing the public hearing, we do need to ask if any other members of the public want to testify. I think that's,
Okay.
I don't know that there are any, but
Is there anyone, I'll open it back up. Is there anyone, a member of the public that would like to testify on this issue? Okay, go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Madam President, I move that we approve the order of condemnation for, let's see, State Street and Pierce Parcel Lane, ACHD project number 317044.001, parcel 6, 400 South Bitteroot Drive, Boise, Idaho.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Mr. Dar. All right, moving on to public communications. Is there anyone in the audience or anyone online that would like to address the commission at this time? All right, well, with that, the meeting is adjourned. I'm gonna go ahead and move into the post-commission agenda. We've got several work sessions. The first of which is our State Street and TTOP work session. Welcome, Justin.
Well, good afternoon, Madam President, members of the commission. For the record, it's Justin Lucas, the Deputy Director of Planning and Projects here at the Highway District. Today to present this work session and information briefing on the State Street Traffic and Transit Operational Plan and a requested addenda to that plan that the partners have been working on over the past several years, to be honest. So just jumping in, I know there hasn't been a lot of communication recently with the commission on this project, but there is a long history on State Street, going all the way back to 2004. I thought it would be good to show this video, which was produced by the partners a few years ago, that kind of talks about the project, its purpose, why we're looking at State Street as a different corridor than other corridors in the Treasure Valley.
The Boise metropolitan area is one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. State Street is a central transportation connection linking the cities of Boise, Meridian, Eagle, and Garden City. Each day, thousands of people rely on this route to get to work, school, shops, and the outdoors. Regional growth is expected to change the character of this corridor, with more housing, jobs, and traffic. Moving people on State Street efficiently, now and in the future, requires frequent transit service. The amount of cars and people on State Street will greatly increase in the near future. One bus carries many more people than one car, and traffic projections show that even though only 10% of vehicles in the future high-occupancy vehicle lane will be buses, they will carry almost half of the people using that lane. That's efficiency in action. The face of the region is also changing. Younger residents and retirees want transportation choices, including better transit, walkable streets, and alternatives to driving. Increasing transportation options benefit everyone. Regional growth is expected to change the character of this corridor, with more housing, jobs, and traffic. Are there ways to balance the desire for mobility with safe, walkable areas that provide housing, employment, and services? How do new technologies affect our mobility? Is State Street ready for the future? Cities along State Street have been addressing these questions, most recently through the State Street Transit and Traffic Operational Plan. The plan provides a vision and strategies to redesign State Street with an emphasis on transit, a greater mixture of uses, and development that supports high-capacity transit. Part of the plan focuses on mixed-use development with local services nearby. Housing should be accessible and affordable. Anyone can walk, roll, or ride safely to the park, to school, to work, or shopping without getting in a car. Many older neighborhoods in the Boise area were developed this way. State Street's future will also include Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, a convenient, efficient, and reliable connection between downtown Boise and communities to the west. Future Bus Rapid Transit would provide 15-minute headways and link to other transit routes. VRT is already planning on service changes to increase bus frequencies. Communities similar to Boise, with bus rapid transit systems, have already experienced these benefits. In Fort Collins, Colorado, daily ridership increased by 75% in the first 6 months of the city's 5-mile BRT line, which resulted in $150 million in revenue and 1,000 new jobs. Opened in 2007, Eugene, Oregon's MX is a 28-mile bus rapid transit line. Daily ridership along the corridor doubled in the first 17 months, which translated into $100 million in investment and 10% job growth. So, what would transit look like in the future? Compass, a regional transportation planning organization, and area partners have been working with the community to develop station concepts to shape the vision of future bus rapid transit corridor. Better transit, safer connected streets, and strong neighborhoods are all part of State Street's transit. Find out more and stay connected for news and updates on this important project at our website.
Commissioners, thanks for watching that. As you can see, there's a clear vision for State Street in the future that has been based on a lot of planning efforts going all the way back to 2004. The video just referenced a website. This is a kind of a clip out from the website showing all of the different studies, plans, and coordinated efforts that have gone on along State Street. Today, we're going to be focusing on that 2011 State Street Transit and Traffic Operational Plan. And our purpose is to discuss some changes to that document that have been kind of worked on through the past several years with the partner agencies. So, as I stated, the partnership goes back a long way, 2004. Part of this partnership has been based on a memorandum of understanding that has been signed by the majority of the agencies that have jurisdiction along this corridor. The first MOU was approved in 2006. Previous MOUs in 2011 and 2017 were also approved. And ACHD has been a adopting agency or a signatory on all of these previous efforts. Recently, in 2021, VRT really did a deep dive on the cross sections and the transit features within the TTOP. This was called, there's a lot of acronyms, this was called the Transit Operational Analysis. And what they were looking at primarily was the operations of transit based on bus pullouts, which were envisioned in the original TTOP back from 2011, versus in-lane stops. That was one of the key elements that this analysis looked at. They also looked at the operations of HOV lanes and what if we were not able to do an HOV lane, which is under current state law, we're not allowed to do HOV lanes in Ada County, and other things like that. And so as we came out of that analysis, there were several findings, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of this as we go through the conversation. But one of the things coming out of that analysis was that based on the analysis of bus pullouts versus in-lane stops, if the HOV lane was removed, the in-lane stops versus the original TTOP cross-section seem to operate pretty well versus the HOV lane cross-section, which is where some of the recommendations today are coming from. So, along with that conversation, as an outgrowth of that, the VRT, ACHD staff, City of Boise, and the other partners got together and started looking at the street cross-sections, the transit network maps, the different improvements called out for in the plan, and the different treatments. And what I'm in front of you today to discuss is the kind of combined effort of what is needed to change from the 2011 plan based on the most current analysis that we have. I do want to be clear that State Street, it's a long corridor. What we're talking about today for the focus of this presentation is just for ACHD's section, which is Glenwood into downtown. So here is the, on the bottom, the original cross-section from 2011. And you can see this, this cross-section has a few features that under the current analysis that we have need to be updated. One of those features is the on-street bike facility. So the original cross-section had a 6-foot bike lane on State Street. Based on a lot of things that have happened since 2011, ACHD as an agency has moved away from on-street facilities in this type of context. So what is proposed to be changed there is to move that bike facility, combine it with the pedestrian facility, and essentially have a multi-use pathway. So that's one big change. The other change is the allowance of buses to stop in that outside travel lane and not have to go into a pullout. VRT in their analysis has found that pullouts in a corridor like this, the bus oftentimes has trouble getting back into the lane, which makes it reliability suffers in that scenario. The other key change, obviously, is the HOV lane, which is indicated in 2011, and in 2024 under the addendum, that lane would be indicated as a multimodal lane, which essentially means that buses will use it primarily, but regular personal vehicles would also be able to use that lane as they would any other lane. So essentially no restriction on that lane, which an HOV lane has restrictions. So just wanted to put the larger 2024 cross-section up there. I'm going to pause. You know, there's a lot of analysis done. There's some notes. This is a a planning document. This is not a design. This is a starting point for the design conversations that would happen when we get a lot deeper into the project process. But you can see this would be the new vision for the corridor. Not unsimilar to what we're doing with State and Pierce Park, to be honest. We're essentially building much of this cross section as part of our State and Pierce Park project.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Justin, just a quick question on that. I can completely understand that the question of having pullouts for the buses, on the one hand, that helps traffic flow of other vehicles. On the other hand, of course, I can understand that the buses have difficulty getting back into traffic. Have there been any examples, in any other parts of the country where they use pullouts for buses, but they either through signage or striping, they put on motorists an obligation to yield to buses re-entering traffic? Does that work? Has it been tried? Do we know anything about that sort of thing?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, there's a lot of different types of transit facilities, pullouts, non-pullouts. I think the issues of buses getting back in, it goes kind of state by state. Some states do have laws related to buses re-entering the roadway. But VRT in their analysis is very confident that this is the most advantageous for the transit reliability that they're looking for along State Street.
And if I may, do you remember, Stephen had given us a presentation on that report and those findings, like a year ago?
Correct.
So yeah, there's been a lot of data that was collected around the efficiencies and the impacts of, maintaining that in-lane stop, and all that good stuff. Commissioner Goldberg.
I'm just going to throw in a historical perspective here, which I like to do once in a while. Jim and I have been in on most of the recent discussions the last 10 years. And he and I will both remember, and this was before the current organization of VRT, we'll remember that the bus lines in Boise used to be very effective, profitable, and well used. Pretty much when they were in private ownership, and that's changed. But years ago, during a pre-commission meeting, it was a work session, we just didn't have them out here in the auditorium, we made sure that the commission at that time made sure that VRT and the city of Boise and all the other partners involved understood that that particular commission and the other ones that have come since, up until this one, because we really haven't had that discussion, have, and this was my words, not anyone else's on the commission, I made the comment that we were going to support the city and VRT in creating a transit corridor on State Street because it was time that they either fished or cut bait in terms of making transit work, and we weren't going to stand in their way. So when the issue of whether or not they should have pullouts or stop in the lane came up, it was brought out on a number that in a whole bunch of other areas that the time factor or on-time factor of the bus lines were impacted, sometimes greatly, sometimes not so much. But that's been one of the biggest problems that the public has ever voiced here about not using VRT, has been they worried about the buses running on time. And so that's something that we have always taken very seriously in our decisions on the State Street corridor. That's it.
Did you have something, Commissioner Hanson?
I just want to thank you for helping to put this together. This is all about, like you say, moving lots of people, and more and more and more and more people are moving here. And this is just a segment we have some authority over. I appreciate the fact. I shout out to Congressman Simpson for getting the earmark that really helped to move this to the next level. And so that there is federal money, there has to be a match, but the city of Boise is largely putting that up. But it's an 80% FTA funds and some of that money that's made. So it's sort of a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. It was all sort of theoretical back in 2011, even, well into just 5 or 6 years ago, but now it's not. There's actually money on the table, there are plans, and so moving forward is, I'm very glad to see that maybe I'll be able to ride a bus rapid transit on this corridor before I'm 6 feet under. So I'm glad we're moving towards this to say, okay, this is what it looks like, because it's really about moving people. This corridor was selected largely, obviously, because there's only so many crossings over the river. So the connectivity is very limited by geography. You've got foothills, you got river, so you really had no choice but to figure out how to move more people, allow more people to move through that corridor. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this with everybody involved and the resources that have been put on the table on all levels.
Madam President, members of the Commission, thank you for your comments. Just in summary, I wanted to highlight the changes. This was also attached in your packet with a very detailed explanation of all the changes. Those in that kind of bluish color up there are specifically related to ACHD's cross-section. Once again, the HOV lane changed to a multimodal lane, the 7-lane cross-section, including that multi-use path, and then replacing the bus pullouts with in-lane stops. So with that being said, the next steps, we would like to bring this back to you on May 1st. It would be a consent agenda item where the Commission essentially accepts the addendum and authorizes the Commission President to sign the Memorandum of Understanding, which has been updated. The draft of that was also included. It really wasn't a big change, relatively minor. I did want to highlight that the Valley Regional Transit Board, the City of Boise, CCDC, and Ada County have already accepted the addendum and signed the Memorandum of Understanding. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, thanks, Justin. I just wanted to ask too, I don't think the public is quite aware of a lot of the cross, agency collaboration that's going on, aside from, these like public MOUs and things like that. So do you mind explaining our involvement at the staff level with these other partners?
Madam President, thank you. It is extensive. So in the last few years, the VRT created what they call a technical advisory committee and an executive advisory committee. So Tom Laws, the manager of planning here at the Highway District, participates in the technical advisory committee. So when these types of issues come up, we participate in the conversations. We talk about pros and cons. We had quite a bit of input on the cross-section. And so there's a lot of kind of that technical work that occurs. At the executive committee level, that's where I sit, and this is all staff level. I sit on that committee and participate with the leadership at VRT. Former Councilwoman Clegg sits on that. We discuss the issues. Compass is on that executive committee. City of Boise staff from the mayor's office, Garden City, Eagle, et cetera, et cetera. And the purposes of those committees is to discuss all of this, coordinate, so there's at least a general level of understanding. Ultimately, it's up to the decision makers to decide how to move forward. But we want to make sure there's really good coordination at the staff level, so when we bring things like this to you, it's clear that there's been coordination and that there has been all the opportunity for staff to comment and then bring it forward for discussion to the elected officials. So similar presentations to this have occurred at Ada County, Boise, VRT board, et cetera. Some of you may have participated in those conversations.
Thanks, Justin. And I would ask then, what's the next step, assuming we confirm the MOU? What's next after that?
Madam President, members of the Commission, so we will continue to work with VRT. They actually received some money through the RAISE grant and some of the funding that was discussed today to move forward on certain aspects of the overall plan. The ACHD's portion has always been very intersection focused up to this point. We completed State and Veterans Memorial Parkway. We completed State and Collister. These are major intersection projects, some of the biggest in the history of ACHD. And next year, and you've seen items on your agenda related to State and Pierce Park, which will be a major intersection project at ACHD. So ACHD, from our perspective, is moving forward with implementation of the plan, providing the space necessary for VRT to operate. Transit improvements are led by VRT, and bringing all that together when we do the main line widening, which is how we reference it. We're working on that. It's a high priority for the city of Boise. Funding becomes the big question. These are very substantial projects. The funding required to do the mainline widening, where we're widening in between the intersections, is going to be substantial. And there hasn't been yet a determination whether we go local funding and we pursue it from that perspective, or we go federal and we go all the way and try to do it from a federal perspective. That is really the next step conversation of, as we move forward, do we want to go with what funding source do we want to rely on the most for these projects?
Thanks, Justin. Okay, awesome. Moving on to the second one. So this is State Street, specifically 8th to 14th. It's our concept study, presentation by staff. Welcome, Aaron and Tom.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam President and the Commission. Today, we're just giving an information briefing of the recommended alternatives that we are developing for State Street 8 to 14. And the purpose of this is to start the conversation and to loop you guys all in of the recommended alternatives before we go out to the public and the elected officials. I'll be doing this presentation along with Tom Laws, Planning Manager. In this presentation, we're going to cover the status of the project, where we are currently. We will then go over outreach results and efforts that we've done for the concept, as well as go over concept refinement and then discuss next steps. Study area. Madam President and the Commission, this is an image outlining the project that we're focused on and the parameters that we're in line. West of 8th, all the way down to 14th Street. I also have on this map an illustration of the proposed YMCA development on the south side of State Street. Project team. The project team consists of, on ACHD's side of things, Tom Laws, me, Aaron Williams, as well as Cody Home. We're also working with Kiddelson Associates, who's our consultant. We're also working closely with Stephen Hunt from VRT, the City of Boise Bree Brush and Tessa Greger, as well as Zach Pietmeyer from CCDC. This is the tentative project schedule that we're hoping to hold for our State Street 8 to 14th concept study. Hoping to wrap up in 2024, go into design 2024, 2025, as well as start construction in 2026. Project status. We came back to you guys back in September to discuss this project when we did a kickoff. From there, we also had an interagency team meeting. That's all the people that I discussed for City of Boise, CCDC, and VRT. We all met together and kind of talked about expectations and goals of the project. From there, we did a big data collection where we analyzed existing conditions and how we can make positive implementations along the corridor. Now, we're at the ACHD Commission update. This is the purpose of just communicating the recommended alternatives before we go out to the public and elected officials. We're hoping to wrap up for adoption in July of 2024. Public survey. At the start of this project, I worked with Aaron Johansson, and we went through all the business owners down State Street in the adjacent area to discuss any problems or anything that they might see about the corridor. And that we also invited them to a business owner meeting. And there, Nick from Kiddelson Associates, as well as us, all teamed up, and we had like an open sheet, and we were discussing, and they were highlighting pros and cons, things that they've noticed, things that we should address for this concept study. We also had all the advisory committee groups come out and walk the corridor with us. We started when the sun was out, and we ended when it was dark, and those two images are illustrating that. From there, we were able to get boots on the ground. We were able to see, okay, well, in the sunlight, this is what State Street is acting like and maneuvering. In the dark, this is how it's acting and maneuvering as well. We also have been working closely with the YMCA because we've been trying to understand, okay, how can our development and their development just come together and really provide a good service to the public. And that we also had an online survey, an open house. We had over 1,900 applicants look at our survey and get informed of the current project. Of those, we had 438 service responses, as well as 29 comments and 30 replies on our online map. We also had, as I said, the in-property person meeting. Coming out of the public feedback, the public gave us a list of their top 5 priorities for this concept study. Here, this slide is illustrating the top 5 public priorities, from 1 being the greatest all the way down from 5 being the least of their public priorities. 1 was improve crossings for State Street for people walking and biking. That's the #1 priority that the public brought forth. The second priority was providing bike lanes. The third was improving existing sidewalks. The fourth was maintaining or improving existing traffic and congestion. And then the fifth, providing a center left turn lane for motor vehicles. Now I'll pass it over to Tom, who will lead the recommended alternatives.
Thank you, Aaron. Commissioners, for the record, Tom Laws, Planning Manager. And so since September, we've done the existing conditions analysis. We went out to the public for the first time. And as Aaron mentioned, at this point, we're really trying to define what are those concepts that we want to take out to the public. I wanted to first highlight that across all the concepts that we're going to show you over the next few slides, there are a few things that we're intending to propose with all of those. First and foremost, this is a pavement preservation or pavement rebuild driven plan and project. So we intend to fully rebuild the pavement along the corridor, including stormwater improvements, adding additional traffic signals at 12th Street and 14th Street, where there are none today. We'll improve accessibility through leading pedestrian interval at each intersection, accessible pedestrian signals, and improving all of the ADA, all the pedestrian ramps to meet ADA compliance. And then we'll also be looking at center medians and access management throughout the corridor. And so with that, and that initial public comment that Aaron highlighted, the project team, the interagency team, and our consultant, we really whittled this down to 2 main alternatives. Concept A, which is a 5 to 4 lane alternative that really resembles what we're looking at today, and then 2 3-lane alternatives, that one including a shared use path and one including protected bike facilities. Just to kind of walk through these, and really our goal over the next few weeks is to be able to provide some really high-level detailed graphics to help explain to the public, explain to our partner agencies what the potential alternatives will look like. So here are just 2 examples of 3D renderings at State and 14th looking east, really at the start of the project, and then right there at that new YMCA site at State and 11th looking east. And our intent with these is, as we further establish these concepts, we'll also have almost 3D fly-throughs of the corridor, talking through what the experience would be if either of these are proceeded with. And so here's just another example of that concept A for the 5 to 4 lane. Really, this is much to what it's like out there today. So further to the west, you have that 5-lane cross section, and then as you proceed closer to downtown, at 11th Street, this will then narrow down to the 4 lanes that we experience today. In addition to that, we'll be looking at different locations to increase the sidewalk width where possible, and then add things that I'd mentioned in that first slide, including the new signals at 14th and 12th. The next alternative, concept B1, is a 3-lane cross-section with shared use pathways. And with this cross-section, really, I think this mirrors a lot to Justin's previous presentation in the TTOP, where we would be having both the bicycle and facilities up off of the curb, and mimicking what you'll likely see with additional lanes as you head further west down the corridor. Here's an example of what that cross-section would look like. One thing to note here is we are looking at bus pullouts with this concept as well. And so in this case, at 11th Street, right there where the YMCA is, working with VRT, we'd be proposing far side bus-only stops. And then finally, with concept B2, this is a 3-lane cross-section with protected bike lanes. And so if the multi-use path, shared use path example that we just highlighted is really showing what is going to be more common further west down the corridor, in this case with the protected bike lanes, this is really mirroring both what is on 8th Street today, south of State Street, as well as what we'll be seeing in the future north of State Street up to the co-op, which was the projects that the commission adopted last fall. And here's just one more example of that. And so in this case, we'd have that 3-lane travel lane cross section with left turn lanes and then protected bike lanes, as well as the detached sidewalk as you move along the corridor. I would like to highlight that we are really focusing on transit operations through this effort as well in our coordination with VRT. And so with that, we're looking at different ways to accommodate transit along the corridor. And here's just one example of that, specifically at 11th Street, whether we're going to have the in-lane stops or those dedicated bus pullouts at the stops at 11th. So in addition to those 3 cross sections that we intend to bring out to the public, parallel to that over the next few months, our intent is to really dive into what are the trade-offs between these concepts alternatives. And that's really a key theme that across this planning area, we have an 80-foot cross section. And so there's a lot of give and take, and we really are going to need to look at what those trade-offs are. So just really high level, these are some of the things that we're considering, really relying on that public information and the priorities that Aaron presented to take a closer look of how close or how well are we improving the corridor based on the alternatives we're proposing. Here's just another example of that with some of the initial safety enhancements and kind of those benefits that we would see as we propose these concepts. And as I had mentioned, that really over the next few months, our intent is to dive even deeper and be able to come back to you once we have that public input complete and more analysis of these concepts, really to lay out all the pros and cons with each. And so in conclusion, the intent of the stakeholder team would be over the next few months to present these 3 concept alternatives, not only to the public, but to our stakeholders, the businesses along the corridor, reach out to all of our interagency teams, partner agencies, so the elected officials, meeting with them as well. Once we receive all of that public input, stakeholder input, and partner agency input, we'll come back together as an interagency team with the goal of bringing all of the information and everything we learned back to you in June of this year. And with that, Aaron and I are happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Aaron. Do you guys mind going back to the second to last slide there, just so we have that process? I know I've got a couple questions, but commissioners, questions? Commissioner Hansen?
I've raised this a number of times in the past. It's context. We touched on it when we were talking about the update to the staff reports, and really we need to help people understand the context. Where is this happening? And we've made major investments to encourage people to use Jefferson Street and Whitewater Park Boulevard, but I think it's really, really important that when we talk about context, we say there's huge capacity that's underused, that the public is invested in, and we want people to use that capacity. And it's the way in which we design the entrance to going into downtown. And so right now, the default is to take State Street, then turn left on 9th, and then go down to your destination in the southern part of downtown. Even though we've made huge investments in other corridors, it's a connected network. I think it's really important that we keep pointing that out, that we've made these investments and that those are underutilized. So when we say, there will be an impact to people who don't want to change on driving through, but if they make a choice and actually take Jefferson, or they take Bannock, or they go down using Whitewater Park Boulevard down to the southern part of downtown, which is their destination, they'll get down there faster. So it's really about development. The other is, this didn't show it, but I know there's a lot of data, critical data, on what happens when you have a lot of human activity and there's currently a lot of human activity, walking activity, biking activity, especially walking. The number of incidences, crashes along that corridor. I think that data needs to be sort of front and forward, say this is what happens if we don't address that on the front end. So those are the two things that continue to strike me as being really critical in helping to frame what we're trying to do here in the context of this change.
Commissioner
President?
McKinney?
Yes, Tom, are there any significant differences between the concept A with the 4 or 5 lane sections and the design that was completed a couple of years ago and was ready to go? Is this concept A basically the same as what those were?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I'll go back and highlight maybe this slide right here. And so really the main differences from that additional concept that we had proposed last year to what we have today is largely those traffic signals at 12th Street and 14th Street. And in addition to that, really looking at that access management, the center medians, and how can we improve the flow along the corridor. So there are enhancements. One thing I failed to mention, but it was a high priority with the city of Boise and with the existing conditions. One thing we are looking at is removing parking along the corridor. There's, I want to say, about 35 spaces total, very, very underutilized. A lot of them, I'm thinking specifically kind of by like the DK Donuts area, you wouldn't really even know that there's parking. It looks almost like a 16, 18-foot travel lane. And so in those areas, even with that 4 or 5 lane cross section, we're proposing to remove that and add to the sidewalk width, add to the buffer space there to improve the experience for bicycles and pedestrians.
Okay, so did the prior design not include signals at 12th and 14th? So that's a new thing, or did?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so signals at 12th and 14th, whereas previously it was just a two-way stop, right? The cross street had stop signs, and State Street was not stopped at all. Is that accurate?
There was discussion, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, there was discussion to look at enhanced crossings. So specifically, I believe it was a Z crossing that we were considering on one side of the intersection. And really, as we were moving through the spring and into the summer, deeper into those conversations, it was really highlighted the need and the desire from the public to look at the traffic signals. Over the last 9 months, it's really allowed us and our consultant to dive in deeper on that.
Okay, sure, I understand, but that's the why. I'm talking about what.
Yep.
The concept A is proposing signals at 14th and 12th, whereas the previous design did not.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Concept A is removing some parking, whereas the previous design did not. Right? How many spaces did you say? 35 or something like that?
I'll want to come back and confirm,
Okay.
but I believe so, yes.
And did the previous design, the previous design also improved the accessibility ramps, did it not?
Correct.
So that's not really a change, is it? Okay. And then likewise, pedestrian ramps and so on. The leading pedestrian intervals, since the pedestrian ramps were all being upgraded, then that's not really a change either, because the previous design would have been perfectly applicable to leading pedestrian interval application, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Center medians. So is that a difference? Did the previous design not include the center medians, and now we're including them?
Correct.
In both the 4 and 5 lane alternative. Okay. But it seems to me that the pavement rebuild and the stormwater improvements, those were always part of the plan, right? So it's really just 2 signals and then some parking. Those are the primary differences. Right, okay. Now, talk to me about the vehicle capacity of 3 lane section versus a 4 or 5 lane section. That seems to me that's a pretty dramatic change. And currently we've got 4 or 5 lanes through that corridor. And so the 3 lane proposals are taking away 2 travel lanes for vehicles. And it seems to me that's going to cut the traffic capacity of this entire section more than in half, or at least in half, right? Is that fair to say?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, there's there's absolutely going to be trade-offs when we're looking at these alternatives.
Okay.
Maybe tying back a little bit to Commissioner Hansen's comments, one of our goals over the next few months is to wrap up some of the traffic modeling that we've been doing out 20 years, looking not only at the impacts on State Street, but those other corridors all the way down to Main and Fairview out to Whitewater Park.
Yeah,
but there will be an impact, yes.
So then, yeah, looking forward, so we haven't yet calculated what will be the change in level of service of the 3-lane versus a 4 or 5-lane section. We don't have that information yet.
Preliminary numbers, but there will be.
What do the preliminary numbers show?
There will be a increase in level of traffic stress or an improvement for bikes and peds, but a decrease in vehicles with that concept 3.
How much of a decrease? Are we going from level of service B to D? Is that what's happening for the peak hour?
We're not quite there yet, Commissioner, to look exactly, but it's going to be D to F.
Okay.
Likely in that area.
The public, and just one last question on the public feedback that we got. Was any of the feedback that we got obtained through random sampling of a wide range of people in the whole area, or was this just kind of self-selected? Was this online where people who go on leave information, or people who come to the public meetings, they give their input? Is that the extent of our public input? We don't have any kind of a random survey of the broader area?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, in addition to the public meetings we had and the online open house, Aaron did go door to door to all of the business owners around the corridor, but in terms of like a larger random sample, that was not completed.
Okay. You know, I think just to kind of to wrap it up, I think it's interesting that the when we look at those 3 concepts, the one that maintains the highest capacity of vehicle, highest capacity for the roadway corridor is the least expensive, and the options that decrease our roadway capacity are also the more expensive options. I think that's worth keeping in mind. Thank you.
Any other questions, or should I go? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
One of the concerns that I have has to do with the bike path utilization. I assume that when we're going through all of this, we will request that our Bicycle Advisory Committee tell us a bunch of stuff, especially, at least according to what I'm worried about, is if we build these gigantic sidewalks, I have every reason to think that the cyclists won't use them, because they express that every month in their meetings that I attend. And so I don't want to waste space, I don't want to waste time, and I sure don't want to waste the money if it's not going to be utilized. Thanks.
I just wanted, Tom, do you mind, can you just confirm that the advisory committees, specifically the Bike Advisory Committee, would be weighing in on that, at least providing that update to us?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, absolutely. So in addition, to the walk that we did earlier on, our intent would be to bring these to all the advisory committees. The one other thing I would add is, that exact conversation we've had a lot with the interagency team, and really it comes down to the question of is the district's intent for every street to be a low-stress bikeway, or in the case of State Street, for example, over the last 6 months or so, the commission has adopted both the Bannock Street Bikeway and the Franklin Street Bikeway. And so if we were to propose one of the other alternatives that don't necessarily have a dedicated bike facility, is that okay, knowing that we have parallel corridors on either side of the street? And that's something I think we really want to get additional feedback and thoughts from the Bicycle Advisory Committee in particular.
Commissioner Gold?
Thank you. I just want to echo Commissioner Hansen's comment about context, not only for the alternate route investment for vehicles, and thank you for mentioning the low stress bike networks that are parallel as well. And kind of just highlight the point that the number one feedback on the initial public survey was intersection safety being the number one priority. This space is a unique area. It's got the high school, the Y, potential for dense redevelopment, connects neighborhoods to the downtown. And a lot of people who use this space regularly and are really familiar with that area have weighed in on that being a high priority. So I just wanted to highlight that. And so then a question, just, we're gonna put this back out, these three concepts back out for another public survey round. And then you're gonna go back to the interagency group and kind of work out those details and then come back to the commission in June. Is that right?
Madam President, Commissioner Gold, that is our intent, yes.
Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, just one thing, I think it's important on the parking analysis. I appreciate that in residential areas that are not going to change their zoned residential, when we do a parking analysis and underutilization, that's an indication that they have sufficient parking on their own property. And so that's why it's underused, and it tends to then create really a context for speeding. And so we can do things like put the chicanes in like we did on Kootenai. In this context, though, parking utilization really has to do with land use, and it's not residential land use on those sites. It's commercial. It's actually going to go denser as you go. For example, you cited the DK Donut site. We can anticipate that probably that property owner is thinking, I'm not making enough money off of this. I'm going to put something much denser. But if we've already decided, if we've already decided you're not going to have on-street parking, then the opportunities for that investment are gone. And as we've seen in downtown Boise, the value of on-street parking is tremendously important. As long as there are bulb outs at the corners so the people are visible when they're crossing. So I think we need to do that analysis of parking in the context of what the development opportunities are and economic return. Because of course, being so reliant on property taxes, it's so critical that be a high value. If we say, well, we're going to go the less expensive route in the way in which we're going to work with this corridor, we shoot ourselves in the foot if we then end up having a lower density, a lower value development or little development because of the way we've designed it. So I think it's really critical in getting to, and probably the city does its economic analysis, certainly CCDC does, on return on investment when you do streetscapes, parking, and those sorts of investments on what kind of investment the private sector then is incentivized to make at those sites, which as a public agency, depending on property taxes, we benefit from. So I think that economic analysis should be as part of that tied into whether we do or don't preserve on-street parking, like on-street parking is preserved downtown and the rest of downtown. Thank you.
Madam President, if I may respond, one other consideration we had when we were looking at that parking inventory analysis utilization was part of the Block 68 YMCA development. There will be a new 450 plus parking garage at that site. So our hope and goal was to really utilize that when it is developed as well.
I just have just two quick questions. So could you, because obviously your initial public outreach was very intentional and very thorough. And so could you highlight what aspects of that public outreach you're gonna reintroduce again and what might be different from this round than the last round?
Absolutely. So, Madam President, members of the commission. So really, with the first public engagement, it was almost a blank slate. So we really asked, what are the strengths of the corridor? What are the weaknesses? How can we improve it to meet your needs the best? Whether that's someone traveling through, a local resident, someone right there on a business owner on the corridor. These top 5 priorities are what we took away, and really the intent with this next iteration would be to go back out and say, did we get it right? Did we hear you correctly? These are the 3 that we are considering. Is there one that rises to the top, or do we maybe need to go back to the drawing board and continue to refine?
Madam President of the Commission, and I might add, the same efforts that we did for the initial public outreach, we would try to continue to do those as well. As I said, the door-to-door, making sure we try to reach the mass audiences and making sure that, as Tom said, we got it right.
Perfect. That was my bigger question. That's great. Thank you. And then, just back to kind of the cost, can you just provide how much of it is going to be covered by CCDC, and then how much would be the cost from the district?
Madam President, members of the commission, great question. And so that's something that we're still working closely with CCDC to determine. One of the items going back to this construction in 2026 goal, and why this effort's a little time sensitive, is because the West Side Urban Renewal District will be sunsetting at the end of that year. And so right now we're confident that we can maintain this schedule and see construction occur at that time. But with any delays, we will likely lose CCDC as a partner. With that, I know that with all of their projects, not only in the West Side District, but all of their districts, it's similar to what we're seeing, where everything is coming way over their engineers' estimates. And so they're still trying to figure out exactly how much money will be available, if any. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There is a chance that they will not be able to be a partner with this, but our goal is to try to maintain that schedule, shoot for 2026, and have CCDC be a partner throughout.
Thanks, Tom, for that. Because I mean, with the news about 5th and 6th Street not being converted, I think that there could potentially, I think that's a question you could follow up with them about, is are there some savings there that they can apply then to this project? So yeah, I totally agree. Okay. Well, thank you both so much for your work and your presentation. Thank you. All right. Our third one is the Linden Street Broadway to Boise Avenue concept study pre-adoption. Mr. Aaron Williams.
I'm back again. Good evening, Madam President and the Commission. My name is Aaron Williams, for the record, Senior Transportation Planner. Today I'll be giving update and pre-adoption for Linden Street Broadway to Boise concept design. And today we're going to discuss the efforts that we did from start to finish and highlight where we are and get your guys' say and hopefully nod off as we get prepared for May 1st adoption. Overview. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss the project team. I'm then going to talk about the project area and then discuss the planning process. From there, I'm going to discuss the initial public outreach, go over the concepts that we presented to the public, and then provide what the public said as their preferred alternative, and then highlight what the preferred alternative was, and then discuss the next steps. For the project team, I work closely with planning staff, traffic, projects, as well as access and mobility. I also work closely with City of Boise, Tessa Greger, and Mike Bazango he's a Division Chief Fire Marshal. I also work closely with Kate Dahl, the principal planner from VRT, as well as Boise Schools' Lynette Dahl, and the principals at White Pine Elementary and Timberline High School. Project area. Right now, this is the slide that's illustrating the focus that we're looking at. I call out the Linden and Leadville intersection. I also call out the Linden and Geckler intersection. And we also are looking at the Boise and Linden intersection. At the bottom of this map, we have White Pine Elementary as well as Timberline High School. Now, it's noted that Timberline also has facilities on the other side of Linden, north side. That's a track and field as well as student parking. On the left side, we have Broadway. There, I would like to say that the City of Boise is currently working on a concept design that they're figuring out how to provide connection from Broadway and Linden to the Federal Bikeway. And they're in concept right now, and it's discussion around multi-use path, and it's really high level, but throwing that out there. The current BLTS and PLTS down the corridor is 3, and then it transitions into a 2. We have 12-foot travel lanes as well as 10.5-foot travel lanes once you get from Geckler to Boise Ave. Currently, there's no signalization at Boise and Linden, and it's restricted on pickup and drop-off times when the school is open and closed. Planning process. Initially, we started by analyzing existing conditions. We reviewed old studies. We looked at traffic patterns, current right-of-way, tree impacts, parking studies, as well as numerous field observations. From then, we were able to conduct initial public feedback. Basically, this was a point where we would say, okay, public, what do you want from this project? What should we be looking for when we're developing these concepts and alternatives? After that, we were able to develop concepts and alternatives based on what we heard. In that portion, we work closely with the schools as this project will impact access to their schools and impact their pickup and drop-off line. From there, we went to public feedback number 2, where we got stakeholder and public input. There we held an in-person PIM as well as an online survey. And then after that, we refined our alternatives to really fine-tune and get what the public was trying to get at. Now, it brings us to where we are now for pre-adoption and preparation for adoption May 1st. Initial public feedback. We had 505 responses. Out of those responses, 78 participants believed that Linden needed improvements. Of the usage, 98% drove, 46% walked, 38% biked. The main takeaways that we pulled from this public involvement was the public wanted us to look at traffic calming measures, bike and pedestrian facility improvements, improve safety for all users, as well as intersection and traffic flow improvements. Through that, we were able to develop our goal and purpose, which was to improve safety for all users and increase connectivity for pedestrians and bicyclists. Of that, I have an infographic outlining the main public priorities. The top 3 were safety, bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, as well as they wanted us to look at slowing down traffic along the corridor. So coming out of that, we were able to develop concepts that we really fine-tuned and developed to present to the public. These 2 alternatives they all had traffic calming and improvements, pedestrian and bicycle improvements. The key components that both alternatives had were raised intersections and pedestrian crossings, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, pedestrian hybrid beacons, as well as speed cushions. On the illustration to the right, we have concept 1, which was a multi-use path, as well as concept 2, which is on-street bike lanes. In concept 2, it's on-street bike lanes that we present with chicanes, and then it transitions to a multi-use path when you're going south down Linden from Geckler to Boise Ave. Here's an in-depth view of what concept 1 could potentially look like, the multi-use path. Here's an in-depth perspective of what concept 2 could look like, existing conditions. This one has on-street bike lanes that are protected by the chicanes, as well as raised crossings, same as the other one. Based on public feedback number 2 we held from January 17th to February 6th of this year, alternative 1 was favored by people that lived along the corridor as well as adjacent to the corridor. The public wanted us to look at improved signalizing and left turn capabilities at Linden and Broadway. Now, given that's part of ITD's network, we are currently collaborating with ITD to figure out how this project can tie into theirs and really meet the public's expectation as well as ITD's expectation, and that's something that we're carrying into design. The public also favored improved additional crossings along Linden Street. We're adding additional crossings. Also, the public loved the fact that we had separate bike facilities that their kids could utilize to get to school. One thing that I noticed while observing how people use the corridor and talking to the parents that go into the school was they wish they had better facilities that allow kids to get to their school safely. Currently, it's not safe. They don't trust their kids to ride their bike to school. On the right, I have an infographic outlining the public's perspective on alternative 1, the multi-use path, and alternative 2, existing conditions. Given that concept 1, the multi-use path, was the favorite alternative, that's the one that staff is recommending, as well as the consultant. Now, these are what concept 1 contains. It's a full roadway reconstruction. We have a multi-use path on the south side that's 10 feet, as well as a 5-foot street buffer on the south side abutting the multi-use path. We have 7-foot sidewalks on the north side. We're removing on-street parking. We're reducing the speed to 25 miles per hour, and we're also including a signal at Boise and Linden. Now, Commission, this next slide I have kind of like a walkthrough of what it could potentially look like and what we're recommending for concept 1, the multi-use path. Here we start at Broadway. As we go east down Linden, we go further down, we hit the Leadville intersection. That's going to be a raised intersection with RRFBs, rapid flashing beacons. And then we also have speed cushions as you're going further down to the right. As you can see here, this is an additional crossing that we're including in this concept. At the bottom of this image, on the south side, there's a pathway. And one of the public's responses to this pathway was they either had to walk all the way down to Leadville or walk all the way down to Geckler just to cross Linden safely. And we're including this connection that they can be able to cross with a raised crossing safely and effectively. Here we have another speed cushion. As we progress, now we meet the Geckler intersection. So this intersection is different. We have a scramble intersection. The reason why we decided to go with the scramble intersection was during the concept phase, we ran into a lot of problems when it came to getting people to and from our facilities, the multi-use path on the south side. And so the scramble allows people to adequately get there safely and either bike to school or bike to Broadway. As we go further down, we have speed cushions. And then we have in front of the school. Currently there's a crossing, it's not raised on Linden Street, but it's to the right. Here we're aligning it based on the school's request. This also ties into the the pathway north that's utilized by the school as well. One thing that I've noticed is there's a development on the north side of Linden that a lot of middle schoolers and elementary schoolers will cross, and they'll use that pathway. This will just make it easier and allow them to cross, as well as help the school out when they're able to get staff there and make sure, it's calm and collected and they're able to allow students to cross safely. Now we're at the Boise and Linden intersection. This intersection is foreseeing major improvements. As I said before, currently there is no signalization there. Here we're proposing a signalization, and we did the research and the data collection, and it meets the warrants. Because of this, we're able to get a left turn lane storage bay. Initially, parents or people that are using the road aren't allowed to make left turns during pickup and drop off, which would cause traffic jam all the way from Boise going down. And so this allows more fluidity for traffic to go through without a lot of conflict points. As well as a raised crossing. As I said at the start of this presentation, we have the school's track and field and student parking on the north side of Linden. Here we have a raised crossing with RFB that allows students to be able to cross. Now, alternative one, high-level cost analysis. These are high-level numbers. It's a complete rebuild. We're also shifting the road up from Geckler to Boise to mitigate impacts to right-of-way. This came in at a high level, $5 million to $6 million. Next steps, public comment period, April 18th to May 1st, and then hopefully going to May 1st adoption hearing. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. That's great. When do I get to call you Dr. Williams? You're getting your PhD this spring, right?
Yes, sir. Madam President and Commissioner Hanson, I got some research to do, but we're almost there.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm just so proud. Thank you.
Thank you,
It seems to me it doesn't make sense to just default to a 12-foot travel lane when we've already said a 10.5 or 11-foot works. So why just default to it? That just makes the challenge of getting folks to drive at the 25 mile an hour speed limit harder if you're giving them, the same width that you would, out on Broadway. So why not design it for 11-foot?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that's something that the team and I have been discussing from when we started developing these alternatives. The thing that we ran into is this is a VRT transit route. And on trash day, when trash cans are in the right of way, it impacts VRT capabilities to use Linden, and it gets into their travel lane. And so we had to go with 12-foot to really get the trash cans out of the encroachment of the VRT buses going down Linden.
That's not persuasive to me. Traffic calming is the number one thing. You showed it on there. Traffic calming, more than just on trash day. VRT is fine with 11-foot. We ran into this on Nespers. I wanted it to be 10.5 and 10. And even they have bike lanes that they overlap with. They said, no, we still want 11-foot lanes. We need 11-foot lanes. So the buses are fine with 11-foot lanes. And it seems to me there's plenty of places that garbage trucks go with even narrower lanes that we deal with. So, and they get around it. Okay, someone's left their garbage a little too far into the street. You just sort of get around it until someone clears it out of the way. It happens all over the place. Doesn't make sense that we would design sort of human error on trash day into the need for a consistent width on Geckler. If it works at 11 feet, I really would like to see us move towards 11 feet on that. There's a question I have on the Linden. This is another one. Let's address this now rather than make the assumptions. On Linden and Leadville, on the northwest corner, there's a property owner whose driveway basically comes off of the corner. And so what we're gonna do is assume it's never gonna change, that we can't convince them or buy or help pay to move their driveway over so that we have 4 crossings. What we're gonna do is we're gonna have people who are coming down the west side of Leadville to cross. They have to cross to the east, cross to the south, cross to the west. They're not gonna do it. They're just gonna cross. Because there's a driveway there. We can't put up a barrier to prevent them from crossing, so they will cross there. But we won't have a striped crosswalk or design it for a safe crosswalk. So can we do something to help figure out how to make it so that that is a safe crosswalk on all 4 sides of Leadville and Linden? Because I understand what the problem is. It's an existing use, and we got to deal with a private property owner whose driveway was allowed to be built umpteen years ago coming off the corner. Can we address that?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that's something that I did speak with the property owner about, and as you said, it's existing usage. The property owner is completely not on board. However, I was talking with internal team and as well as the consultant, and there's something that we can potentially look at in regard to providing barriers there that tells the public not to cross there and to utilize the other side of Linden or Leadville.
That would make it hard for him to turn into his driveway, though. So that's a issue I think we can resolve. Start to negotiate. We'll pay for moving or improving his driveway and the frontage and so forth. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that property owner doesn't want a child to be killed in front of their house any more than anyone else. People will cross. I mean, that's the reason why we're adding another crosswalk on Linden. People already cross there when they come out of the Lakewood subdivision, and they just cross. They look and dash across. So that's the best way to build places where people are already using it, and so that's really important. The last one has to do with, of course, the property, the old Shopco property on the west side of Broadway is going to change. It's probably going to become much more dense residential, so there'll be some heavy use on that side. So working with ITD so that our multi-use path continues across into whatever the design is over there. But in the meantime, the safer way to get up to Federal Way is also, and should be, down through that little neighborhood, down Leadville, and then Richmond is the connecting street. There's multiple ways of sort of connecting it, which again, people will use, they will prefer to use as they're coming down Leadville than to go to Broadway at Linden. So they'll go through that. So if there's a way we can move up or include a design on Leadville and Richmond that is tied into that the negotiations on the connection to the Federal Way pathway, that's really important. That's why it's really important that be on our 5-year plan, because it's got to work to make the investment we've already made on the Leadville pathway work. So things coming together at that point. That's really a high priority, and I know Christy knows that already because I've talked to her about it.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, I just wanted to step in real quick on that particular corridor. It's always difficult when we're working with existing conditions and trying to get appropriate treatments. For that corridor, for that specific intersection, we can add under additional consideration that when we work it into the design phase, we can continue to talk to that property owner to see if there's some other alternatives we can do. But at a concept level, we weren't confident showing it when the property owner was not in favor and was not willing to move that driveway. It's been there for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
So we're happy to add that to additional considerations to look at that further when we get into design and right-of-way phase of the project.
I think
if you're comfortable with that.
I think that'd be really important. I don't know if there's a way in which you can attach that to the property so that when that property owner sells it, it's like the public has already had a discussion. We're very interested in helping to pay to move that driveway so that at some future date, so that it's not, when we're all gone, it's actually part of a public record that there's a need there. And in the meantime, to make that as safe as possible, because people will just cross. I'm not sure how you can avoid that, because the shortest point between 2 points is straight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner McKinney, did you have something?
Yes, thank you. Aaron, just a couple of quick questions about the existing conditions out there. Those aerial photos that we were looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like the current conditions are we've got curb, gutter, and sidewalk along the entire length of this corridor already. Is that correct?
Madam President and Commissioner McKinney, yes, sir, that's correct.
And when was all of that built? When was the current system, the current facilities, do we know how long ago that was constructed?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, as in, are you saying when the road was built out
Well,
completely?
the current facilities that are there, when were they installed? Do we know that? Because it looks like from the aerial photos that our pavement's in pretty good condition, right?
Madam President and Commissioner McKinney, they did go through and they just did chip seal down Linden Street. I think it was about 2 years ago or last year. And so it's fresh.
Okay, so it's got a new chip seal, but in any case, I'm just trying to get an idea for the age of the existing facilities, how old they are. Basically, is it fair to say that we're not rebuilding it because the current facilities are in bad condition? The proposal here is to rebuild it basically for better pedestrian and bicycle safety. Is that accurate?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, we're going through and we're trying to meet the needs of what the public wanted along the corridor. And in that, they asked for these specific improvements, as well as we're looking at the Boise and Linden intersection. That's also tied to this project.
Okay, well, and I guess the Leadville intersection as well. So we're putting in 2 signalized intersections. It's being proposed as part of this project. Was it Leadville? It was Leadville, wasn't
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, it's Leadville has RFBs. It's not completely signalized.
Under the proposal?
Under the proposal, yes, sir.
Oh, okay, all right. So
full signal at Boise and Linden.
Okay, and currently Boise and Linden doesn't have a signal?
No signal at all. It's restricted during pickup and drop off, and it's a stop sign.
Okay. All right, and that's really kind of the key. I just wanted to make sure that I had a handle on basically saying that, again, like you say, based on public input, the idea here is to rebuild this entire, and what is it? Is it about 2 miles?
1 mile.
1 mile. This 1 mile segment being rebuilt, basically the same configuration as far as traffic is concerned, but with these additional pedestrian and bicycle features and so on. And really that's about the sum of it. Is that an accurate statement?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, to an extent, we're also including traffic calming measures throughout the corridor as well.
Right, okay, and traffic calming. And of course, we look at traffic calming and we say, yeah, largely that's also to benefit pedestrians and so on, to reduce speed. So, okay. And so you'll be coming back to us, May 1st with the adoption hearing of the preferred configuration.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's right. We're hoping to come back May 1st with the adoption hearing for these proposed concepts.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson, did you have
I was going to answer Commissioner McKinney's. That's the old Tate Dairy Farm. Linden's always been there. Lakewood was built from the old farm in the 1970s and 80s. So Linden was always the street he got onto the farm. It has now become, as people want to go to Harris Ranch and points to the southeast, they get off the freeway down Broadway and just shoot down Linden. So while we support connectivity, this is like the main thoroughfare, because if you look at, there's no other point where you can cut across over to Boise Avenue except on Linden. And it goes by an elementary school and a high school. So it's not ideal, and we probably should have done this a long time ago. But, frankly, it was an old dairy farm with the houses, most of the houses that existed at the time were to the north. But now there's a lot of residences, and actually there's some increasing densities that are going in there. So folks in this neighborhood have been asking for this for a long, long time. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldberg?
Yeah, I would just emphasize that pretty much anything we can do to inspire parents to allow their kids to walk and bike to school is going to be reap huge dividends for us, and it'll lower congestion quite a bit. I mean, we found this out by accident down in my district. with the two Lake Hazel schools and the little bit of improvements we did on the sidewalks and sidewalk gaps there, all of a sudden, the principals have told me face to face that they've got 3 times the bike racks and a whole lot shorter line of parents bringing their kids to school. And I think that's what we want to have happen here. And it'll make the convenience for drivers in cars that much better.
Madam President of the Commission, I might add, speaking on that, City of Boise approved, they love the concept of the multi-use path, as well as with my coordination with the schools. They favored the multi-use path as well, just because of the aspect that it'll allow students to get out their cars and hopefully bike to school and really mitigate the traffic, mitigate the congestion along the corridor. Yeah.
Thank you. Aaron, I just have a quick question. So on the side where there's the multi-use path that you have, is it in a 5-foot wide buffer?
Madam President, we do have a 5-foot buffer and a 10-foot multi-use path on the south side.
So has there been any conversation about landscaping in that buffer?
Madam President, that is something that we're going to look at into design. Just because of where we are at the concept level, the city didn't feel like stepping forward and saying which permanent treatment that they would go with.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah. Commissioner Golden, anything?
No. Thanks, Madam President. No, I'll just add that improved safety for all users is improved safety for all users in the neighborhood, and the people who live adjacent to the corridor realize that. And so, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Aaron. Great presentation again. All right. Item number 4, the leading pedestrian interval project update. Welcome, Paige and Kelly.
President Pickering, Commissioners, thank you so much for having us today. For the record, my name is Kelly Baker. I am a traffic engineer in our safety engineering group. Today, we're just going to give you an update on our Let's Get There Safely signalization project, which is the implementation of leading pedestrian intervals throughout Ada County. So at this point, we have 58 signalized intersections that have the leading pedestrian interval implemented. There are 2 more signals that currently have our traffic operations team will be installing early summer, so we'll have 2 more soon. So just kind of an update or a refresh on just the effort that kind of is put into getting those implemented. Due to ADA and PROAG guidelines, when you do an improvement, you have to make sure that it's benefiting all users. And so with leading pedestrian interval, we do have to make sure that it has the accessible pedestrian signals, which is the audible push buttons installed. So at signalized intersections where those are not installed, we have to look at getting those installed. And if we do make those physical improvements, we then also have to make sure that the ramps are up to ADA standards. And so that's that physical improvement effort that's needed. Most of these signals had that as well already installed. So just up to date on where we are so far with the remaining signalized intersections that did need some physical improvement. We split them into 4 groups and hired 4 consultants to review those just for the sake of the volume of them. Those packages were ITD and ACHD intersections, coordinated intersections, and those are signalized intersections within a coordinated roadway corridor. We have uncoordinated intersections, and those are the ones that are without APS, and as well as the Boise downtown area, just because that is a very unique timed grid. So we did split that effort into 2 phases. Phase 1 was more of an evaluation and estimation. The consultants went out and did some ADA evaluations, looked at potential improvements that would be needed, the right-of-way impacts that those improvements may have, and did kind of an estimated cost on that, looking into phase 2. An effort that did, the total spent was $977,000. And this is an example of one of those exhibits that were submitted with that phase 1 effort. This is Glenwood and Marigold, and with this typical example, it has all 4 corners do need ramp improvements as well as APS installation. So we found that there were a total of 227 intersections that need physical improvements. We did remove, that is less than our signalized intersections. So with that, we removed any intersections that were already programmed for improvements through our integrated 5-year work plan, any that were planned improvements through CCDC or City of Boise, just so we aren't duplicating efforts. And we know that planning and projects is implementing LPI at all based that's a standard going forward, as well as all new signalized intersections have that going forward. And also there are signals that do have the APS present, but they are within the coordinated corridors that the signal timing effort would need more work on that corridor. So within those 227, we were able to identify 50 that our internal design groups are going to take on and design those and implement those and construct those. So with the selection of those, it really was intersections that did not have significant improvements needed, just for the best use of our time and effort, that we felt we could take on and still make other improvements throughout the county. So the remaining 177, the estimated consultant fees for designing of those is $10 million. We currently do have a contract for a package of 10 intersections that are being designed currently. So from here, Paige is going to go over what's next.
Thanks, Kelly. For the record, Paige Bankhead, Development Technical Services. So with all this information from phase 1 and those exhibits, we did estimate that there'd be about 54,500 square feet of right-of-way to acquire. That's approximately 249 parcels at $1.4 million. And this is estimated to be about 3 to 4 years of work for one right-of-way agent.
And that's for how many projects?
That is for all of the 50 and 177 intersections that need to be redesigned. The anticipated construction costs for all of this, for 227 intersections that need the APS and ADA improvements, is about $90 million to $110 million. This was estimated based on the phase 1 analysis and recently bid ACHD projects.
Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
How many years are we going to wind up phasing all of these in?
President Pickering, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I'll get to that eventually, but we estimate about 15 to 20 years.
Okay.
Phase 2 progress so far, just like Kelly said, we do have 10 intersections that are currently under design with a consultant. That was a fee of about $371,400. Currently, the 95% design is due at the end of April for those 10 intersections, and we're still going through that review process with them. Out of the 50 intersections, ACHD staff anticipates to design 6 intersections this year. And as always, we're always looking for ways to accelerate projects. And so some of those internal design projects, like Kelly said, is really what can we do quickly and what can we do with our forces. And I know this is a busy slide, but this is an example of one of our internal design projects at Harrison and Hill Road. This intersection required a couple landing adjustments, so widening a landing, replacing a ramp, truncated domes, and obviously adding APS at the intersection. And so this is a type of project that we would take on internally that is something that needs few improvements, not all 4 corners, and that we think we can design and move more quickly.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Another question. These projects, 177 of them, I assume that some of them are going to be completed during other types of projects that we have going, some capital improvements, some capital maintenance, that sort of thing. Is that true?
So President Pickering, Commissioner Goldthorpe, that 177 already has those programmed intersections taken out. So that is intersections that aren't currently programmed, but it is possible in the future as we move along that some of those intersections could be programmed in our planning and projects. This is an example of an intersection that we would have a consultant do, since it is pretty intensive. Needs all 4 corners to be reconstructed with ramps, sidewalks, additional right-of-way and parking lot encroachments that would be more complicated. And this is at Orchard Street and Morris Hill Road. Phase 2 priorities, as always, we want to prioritize locations near schools and school walk routes. as well as 2 pedestrian attractors. And we do take into account, including future development in the area that may improve the intersection or ACHD improvements that are programmed at an intersection. And recommended implementation is over 15 to 20 years for these improvements. Our plan is to review funding annually with our budget committee and planning and projects to see how we can get these programmed and into the integrated 5-year work plan. Yes. And we will now stand for any questions.
Thank you, Paige. Can you remind us, so it's 10 million for the consultant or consultant fees, but then what was the total amount for the 177 intersections for the build?
That is the amount for the 177 intersections for design, just design.
No, but for construction.
Oh, for construction. So for everything, we have 90 to 110 million for 227. I can split the 177 out for you, but we don't have that number right now.
Yeah, I think that would be good at the next update of some kind, because it would be good to know over the next 15 to 20 years, right? How much is that going to cost us? Okay, Commissioner Hansen?
Yeah, thank you, President Pickering, and thanks, Paige. Looking at some of these locations, the Orchard one jumped out at me. I know that a number of urban renewal districts are they either exist or they anticipate putting them in there, in Meridian and Boise in particular. I don't know whether we could sort of like figure out where those are going to happen so that they take responsibility for them in conjunction with the other streetscapes that they would be doing, because that would be, you'd want to make sure they're designed consistently with the landscaping streetscapes that those URDs do. We don't know exactly how many of these are within URDs existing or planned URDs, but that'd be an important role because those property owners basically end up paying to build them in conjunction with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner McKinney?
President, thank you. Yes, let me just ask, are out of all of these 227 intersections, are there any of them that do not already have ADA ramps, whether under prior standards? I know current ADA standards are different than what existed in the past, but are there any of these intersections that don't already have pedestrian ramps? How many of them?
President Pickering, Commissioner McKinney, I can't say exactly how many. Some of them already have ramps. There are locations that may not have ramps. I could get you that information. We'd have to look through all of our exhibits and data. But we do have, as we install LPI, we are changing the pedestrian user's experience, which triggers installing APS, which then triggers installing and updating ramps that may or may not be there or may not be compliant.
Right, and so I guess part of the reason I asked that question is because when I look at spending 90 to 100, more than $100 million, we met with the Meridian City Council last year, I believe it was, and the comment was made when we talked about this leading pedestrian interval thing. A member of the Meridian City Council said, "Hey, this is about safety. We've got to spend it," which I think is it's a myopic way of viewing it, because in fact, again, we could spend an infinite amount on safety and we would never solve all the safety problems. There's no way to make these things perfectly safe. But here's kind of the thing that struck me, going back to the very beginning when we first talked about the leading pedestrian interval, is that the studies that were reported show that there is up to a 13% improvement in safety, which suggests to me that best case scenario, maybe we'll get that much of an improvement, but in a lot of cases, is there actually going to be an improvement at all? And it makes me stop and think that this is an awful lot of money to spend for maybe a little bit of improvement. That's a concern that I think we have to take seriously when we're considering how to spend the public's money. Nobody wants dangerous intersections, but the truth is there's no way to make a perfectly safe intersection. And so on the one hand, while all of this that we're proposing, sure, better. The question is how much, and is it, is the cost equal to the benefit? Does the cost justified in terms of the benefit that we're going to get? And I sometimes wonder about that, and it makes me think that perhaps overall, and this is a policy consideration I think we as a commission need to think about, if we're going to go down this road, is it the kind of thing that we need to go down at this speed, or given all the other demands, all the other needs in the county, is it prudent to spend this amount of money this fast on this thing when the benefit at best is going to be fairly small? Or would it be better to say, let's slow down a little bit, because we've got an awful lot of other needs for our funds? That's really my primary concern. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, I'm going to go at Commissioner McKinney's angle a little different way. Paige, is the ADA and the PROWAG now a federal mandate?
President Pickering, Commissioner Goldthorpe. So it's been adopted by the DOT? The Department of Justice has not adopted it yet, but ACHD has adopted it. And so we use PROWAG as guidance for design.
So the LPI is not a mandate?
The LPI is not a mandate.
Okay. You have indicated that our priorities are around schools, places that are major attractors. I know the ADA part of this is a mandate, though.
Correct.
Going up to current ADA requirements. Just to go on the record publicly, these are requirements. They are unfunded to us. So you as Ada County taxpayers, or from whatever source we can finagle the funds, you are on the hook for this mandate. That's not to say that I'm against it as far as doing the ADA requirements. Much to the contrary. I just want people to understand that they have no choice. Now, with regards to the LPI, I think because of the incredible costs that we, for the time being anyway, stick to the really important attractors that we need to upgrade. Because of what Commissioner McKinney said, as far as this cost, 20 years, it could be 4 times that amount, the way we've been experiencing lately.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't remember who it was in the House of Representatives nationally when he say $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Now we're talking money. We're getting to that way on local projects. So that would just be my opinion on this, because of the costs. And if it's not absolutely mandated, that we take our time going with the major attractors first. That's it.
Commissioner Hanson, did you have something?
Madam President, thanks, Paige. And I just want, it's a policy dynamic, these intersections in the new areas, the new ones that are getting built, the ones we're spending tens of millions of dollars to build in new areas, and they're actually being built in anticipation of what the traffic will be like in 2050. So we're actually not building them for today, we're building them for tomorrow. But then we're saying that the old areas where these standards didn't exist, they have to wait for another 20 years. So I think that the taxpayers today of the older areas are just as entitled to have safe intersections on arterials as the taxpayers who are going to be living in those new areas in 2050. So we have to constantly balance that because we're dependent on property taxes. And so I think it's really important, and I really appreciate, and yeah, we have to have a game plan, set it out. We're not going to be here in 20 years, but hopefully by the time we knock off all of these, we won't have to worry about that. And more people will feel they can safely invest in where they're living in these older neighborhoods. So I really appreciate that we've gone through this process of quantifying, measuring, and it's these objective measurements. And that is so critical to making priority decisions with the limited tax dollars we have. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, because I would completely agree with Commissioner Hansen's point. It's so hard, especially when we initially talked about this. It's like, you know, how big is this elephant, right? And that all that we have, right? Because you talked about these are the number of intersections we have. This is where we're at, right? So I think it's a really good gauge of how, you know, to that balance of the, you know, existing deficiencies versus the improved intersections or the new build intersections, right? And just how that is morphing as we continue to grow and expand. But I just want to say, I feel like this is a really measured approach. And just to, you know, doing some quick math, right? Obviously I can't account for inflation, Commissioner Coulter, but with like those numbers.
I'm a lot older than you are. I can't.
just you know, like the budget that we currently just passed, right, last year, and the cost, we're talking about like a 2% budget, you know, it's 2% of our budget. So very small and I would argue this is an essential function of the entire like infrastructure. So, and I think, you know, Commissioner McKinney's point about, you know, weighing like the value of that investment, you know, the bang for your buck for that investment is a fair point to make. But from my perspective, I think that this is that. But I also just want to put a bug in our staffs here as we talk about the winding down of the safe sidewalk, you know, and safe routes to school funding. If this is something that could be incorporated into that language of some sort, right? And be able, because I think this is something that a lot of folks understand. They want to see those ramps be ADA compliant. Again, that's in my opinion, that's essential, it's mandated. And so I would argue that maybe that could be woven into those conversations as well. So maybe there could be additional funding to support that ask. Potentially. So, okay.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
May I just ask one follow-up question? And I just kind of follow up on my earlier comments. I'd like to know, just out of curiosity, if you can go back and look at, out of these 220 intersections, 227 intersections, how many of them have ADA ramps of some kind?
Sure.
You know, that were installed in the past. I think that would be worth knowing.
Commissioner McKinney, are you saying which ones are currently meeting ADA qualifications?
No, because ADA standards have changed over the past 20, 30 years.
So you're just saying that just have
What
ramps.
I'm saying is those that have ramps of some kind that were installed under whatever standard in the past, you know, ADA has gotten much more particular and specific over recent years, but do they have something that was built previously and that we now say, well, if we rebuild it, of course we have to do it differently. But is there something there already that met the standard at some time or other in the past? That's my question.
President Pickering, Commissioner McKinney, we can get you that information.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, well, we just have an executive session and just appreciate staff and everyone's patience, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.